And I have to hit the OK. There we go.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Ninjutsu podcast. I'm Don Roll, your host. With us is Rory Miller, which many people in the Bujinkan will know and highly admire. However, we might be having some people that just join us that don't know who Rory is. So, Rory, could you give a brief explanation of, what you are and why we should listen to you? I'll drink my
Um,
coffee.
I was a jail guard for a long time and then went and was a contractor in Iraq. I've been a martial artist, mostly Japanese arts, since 81. Um, I am not a member of the Bujinkan or involved in ninjutsu anyway, but I did study a Koryu for most of that time, and that's what I consider my martial heart, for want of a better word. It's it was interesting because it really prepared me for really balls to the wall survival fighting, but
Mhm.
there was nothing in there for handcuffing, so I had to go other places for that. So
Yeah, the Japanese version. I've learned the Japanese equivalent of handcuffing, the tying stuff that you mainly
yeah.
see at BDSM sites now. And one thing that kind of was imparted to me is that basically, if there was any struggling or anything like that, the Japanese just stand back and hit them in the head a lot until they stop moving. So yeah, can't do
For
that.
for our system, one of the things was the follow through on the throws. So if you got a hip throw or a shoulder throw,
Mhm.
the modern sport follow through, yanking up on the arm is actually to put them in a break fall position. It's safest. If I
Mhm.
push down on that arm instead of yanking it up, then they break everything from here to here. If I push both shoulders down, it breaks their neck. If I yank both shoulders up at the same time, it fairly reliably breaks their tailbone, which makes most people completely incapable of fighting.
Mhm.
So if if they were to do any binding, and the only difference was a very slight motion in a follow through to a throw.
That's it. Okay. But today we're going to talk about your book and your experiences on living in the deep brain, basically how to develop your intuition. And this is of interest, I think, to Bujinkan members, because in the Bujinkan we have what's called the Godan test or the Sakki test. And again, for those of us, for those joining us that are not part of the Bujinkan, it essentially is you sit with your back to the person giving the test, and they have a sword. Nowadays, it's a bamboo sword. In the old days, it used to be a real sword. Yeah, I've been told that if there was a student that they had questions about, he might misuse the art. It wasn't a test; it was an execution. But yeah, so if you want to be a teacher, a full-fledged teacher in the Bujinkan, you have to take the fifth Dan test. And yeah, I took it in Japan, and I can't really scientifically explain it other than one second I'm sitting there, the next second I'm looking back at, where I was sitting and going, what the hell just happened? And but you've had experiences with, moving when you should have moved, and you're here because of it. Um, just as a minor side story, Rory and I basically we went to the same little get together that until COVID came along was every summer. And it's just a bunch of guys. Clint, who has also been on this podcast, goes to it. And it's a good meeting of people. I don't want to give too many details so that people start bugging, trying to, some Uber Soke wants to come in and, like take pictures of him with everyone. But yeah, it's a lot of heavy hitters, and they allow even people like me in, that aren't so heavy hitters, but I do sing pretty well. But one night we're sitting there, it's a light drizzle, so we're all underneath this tent that, the cooks have set up because it's a barbecue all weekend. And I'm looking at you, Aurora, and you're talking to someone, your back's to me, and there's a running gag among these groups called tada. And it's requires an approach from behind. And I'm thinking, I could totally tada Rory. And at that second, you turn around and you look at me and you smile, and then you go back to your conversation. And I'm like, oops, okay, found
Yeah.
out, hand in the cookie jar. So yeah, so I know that you basically can pick things up. You could
Mm.
possibly probably pass the Godan test. I'd like good money on it. are there any other incidents where it's been, that you can talk about that, like you got a feeling and you did something or you didn't do something and it probably was why you're still here?
It there are 100 things. Um, the the thing is though, when it works, you don't know anything was going to happen. So it's one of those when you look down a dark alley and go, I'm not going to go there, nothing happens. And one of the old sayings is success is often invisible.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
the similar is like how many bad drivers are out there?
Too many.
And the actual number is very low, but you only notice the bad ones.
Mm.
Being a good driver is completely invisible. So there you
Yeah.
might have been there with 1,000 cars, but you remember the two assholes.
I, I gotta disagree a little bit on that.
Okay.
Here in Colorado, we are not the worst drivers according to a survey, but we're close to the top. And we're not the most polite drivers according
Mhm.
to a survey, but again, close to the top. So I notice a lot of people, like they'll let you in and all that. I mean, and again, combination, you'll see people like be in the far left lane of the freeway and suddenly pull across all the lanes to get to the off ramp. And but they're all going, you see them in the background going, sorry, 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 sorry. So yeah, so I do notice, a lot of very polite Colorado drivers because, I look for it, to be honest. I like to look for people that are doing nice things, like letting me in easy, slowing down, stuff like that. So yeah,
It,
but yeah, in general, I know what you mean. It's the bad apples that really
yeah.
hand out. And again, it's kind of like um, the number of assholes, non-Japanese in Japan is actually pretty low, but oh boy, do you
Mhm.
see them.
Yeah. And that's one of the cognitive biases is that we remember bad things more than we remember good things. And so anyway,
Yes.
so visible, but the same thing, the turn and smile. I was walking through one of the dorms, this 55-man dorm,
Mhm.
and I could feel someone deciding if he could take me.
Mm.
And I turned and looked and smiled. And when I looked in that, I did that 180-degree turn. Every place I looked went dead quiet. And when I got to him, he turned absolutely pale and immediately picked up a phone and pretended he'd been talking to someone on the phone for a while. So it's stuff like that. It's like, did anything really happen? Um, it's I've been told not to smile in pictures because a lot of people it makes them uncomfortable. So maybe just my snaggly teeth and general look. So there's that, but everyone, like everyone who's survived a close range knife attack has had a feeling and moved really fast. And so there's a lot out there. We're wired to do this. There's a whole bunch of things we don't know about our brains because we have been civilized for so long.
Yes.
But we have a lot of pre-civilization instincts that are very powerful. But we're so used to suppressing them. This is your nature, but if you spent 40 years practicing suppressing your nature, you're better at that than you are letting it go, than letting
Mm.
it work. Suppression is a skill, and most people are extremely skilled at suppression.
I see. So you're talking about things like, oh, I don't want to be silly,
Yeah.
or I don't, I'm being silly. It's probably nothing type things. And yeah, yeah, reminded of the book, again, recommended, The Gift of Fear, where, a lot of people,
Mhm.
one of the stories that, I read in that, it's by Gavin DeBecker, as I said. Um, a woman saying, I can't understand when my dog is, reacting to my boyfriend this way. And,
Yeah.
you know, they took a video of her interacting with her boyfriend with the dog, and she's giving off signals saying that she's frightened. And the dog's picking up on that and reacting to the boyfriend, but she was consciously unaware of it. So things like that. I mean, have become a little bit too civilized. And I hope your video hasn't frozen.
Um, you've been a little squeaky. I'm working off a hotspot because there's no DSL line at my house.
Okay.
So it might be a little little wonky. The best example comes from she's an instructor who teaches situational awareness in Los Angeles County. Her name's Beverly Baker. And one of her students, after the class, she's talking about going jogging, and there's this car going at jogging pace following her.
Ooh.
So she cuts into a cul-de-sac, and it follows her around the cul-de-sac. And she takes a couple of turns, and it follows her through each of the turns. And it suddenly pulls up and blocks her off. And she looks Beverly straight in the eye and says, "What were the red flags I could have seen?" That's how deep the denial goes.
Yeah. But one thing that we've talked about, uh, you mentioned last time we
Now it
talked
looks like you're
that,
frozen.
okay. So one thing that you
Still
mentioned in our,
there?
I'm still here.
Okay. I might do something switchy, so hold on.
Okay. We're working that without a net, folks.
Well, you're working with
Yeah. Hmm.
okay, you moved.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay. Uh, Pattern interruptus. Okay, so the last time we talked, you mentioned something about, like our instincts and stuff like that. Again, suppression,
Mhm.
instincts, listening to instincts. If you're raised in a toxic environment, a lot of your inputs, a lot of your signals that you're picking up with will be toxic, so to speak. Um, you know, and I was wondering if you could kind of explain that a bit.
I frame that a little differently in
Okay.
that it's not that it's not like it poisons you or ruins you.
Mhm.
But your instincts develop in an environment and they will be instincts for that environment. When you move to a different environment, they may be wrong.
Okay, gotcha. Right.
Um,
So just a matter of like class or different culture or, something like that.
well, I'm thinking truly toxic stuff. If you have parents who are nice until you disagree with them and suddenly just absolute betrayal, complete reversal, your instincts learn that everyone is being nice is trying to set you up.
Gotcha.
And so you
So,
go into an environment with instincts that helped you when you were in the original toxic environment, but they can backfire now. One of the reasons why it's so hard to get out of criminal life, and I only know a handful of people who've done it, and I think you know all of them. No, you know about half of them.
yeah,
Um,
some of
the
them
re
are probably going to come on the podcast.
Yeah, the reason it's so hard is because they know how to be criminals. They know what the rules are, they know what the consequences are, they know how to behave. They have no reason to believe that the straight life isn't just as dangerous, but they don't know the rules. And a human would much rather be in a bad place where they know the rules than a place that might be better where they don't. Uncertainty is more limiting than actual danger or fear of actual danger. It,
Right.
it's just a human thing.
So the new signals, new set of rules, don't know
Mhm.
what you're doing. I mean, I've dealt with a few things like that living in Japan. It's like uncertainty is a
Mhm.
bitch. But that's nothing compared to say going from like a cartel gang member to trying to live a life as an honest person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of Mark's sayings is he no, I can't say it, it's too racist, but he had to learn to show anger like a middle class person. Where he was raised, he didn't show anger because he didn't want to give anybody a warning. If you're going to stab somebody, you didn't want them to know you're mad at them because then they defend themselves. So showing anger was something he trained himself not to do. Work in the jails, I showed almost no emotion. If I did show emotion, I was faking it to get an effect because I don't want to give other people information.
I one thing, again, it's rather minor, but one of the things that, I personally had a blind spot, minor wise. Um, Colorado basically the definition of a desert is 10 inches or less. Uh, Kentucky gets 37, Maryland gets 33 inches of precipitation a year.
Yeah.
We get 15. So I don't know if you noticed it when you were out here, but there's not much, it's green, but it's not very green.
Yeah.
So I always associated, green with safe. And I go to Maryland. And my host hosted basically, oh yeah, and there was a crime here, and there's because again, the guy that hosted me is up on the local crime scene, knows where things are going on. And I'm like, whoa, because I'm seeing the same type of buildings, they look the same, that would set off red flags for me out here. The graffiti, broken windows, the bar, stuff like that. And I'm ignoring it because there's trees everywhere. And that's, again, for me, it was just a lot of trees meant, rural areas being safer. It was just a complete blind spot for me, you see. And it's not something
Yeah.
as not as something as like having to change how you would express yourself. But yeah, even me, I can point to that and say, yeah, that was a point where I had a blind spot because once he pointed out, yeah, there was a guy that was basically, carjacked right there last week. Then I saw, oh, bars on the windows, graffiti, oh, there's a lot of pawn shops in the area, things like that. Completely ignored it because of the trees.
That's a level of self-awareness. The hardest thing to find are your own blind spots.
Well, it was kind of like my nose was kind of rubbed in it at the face because I knew that there was a crime there. He was talking about all the
Yeah.
crimes. So,
One, I was training with a mutual friend, and it was a knife defense, and I think most knife defense is bullshit because most people have not had enough experience with it. What I tell people is I've had 5 people try to stab me, but you never even imagine going onto a judo tournament or a coach that only ever had 5 matches. That just is ridiculous, and I can't teach luck. But our mutual friend, pointed out I wasn't taking mutual. Let's call him mutual acquaintance. That I wasn't taking it seriously.
mhm.
I wasn't treating it as a lethal threat. But the actual thought that ran through my mind is, no, you're wrong. I'm not treating you as a lethal threat. The knife is dangerous. You are not.
Yes, that's true. I mean, the old saying, which would you rather face, Dirty Harry with a 22 or Woody Allen with a 44 Magnum?
Yeah. I've never heard that saying, but yeah, it tracks.
Yeah. So we've got a little bit of time left. In your book, you've got all these exercises and advice and stuff like that for,
Yeah.
just a personal note, I noticed one of the ones that you mentioned was, of all things, snorkeling.
Yes.
Um, and strangely enough, before I did this, I was briefly reading a story about a guy that died of pulmonary something.
Okay.
Basically, you get a little water down your throat, and then hours later you die. And he
Oh,
got it snorkeling.
okay.
Um, so why do you think snorkeling really kind of helps develop these instincts, these abilities?
Because there are environments that we were raised in. One of the things, gravity is always working on your body, so much so that you don't notice it. You can only move in 2 dimensions, so much that you don't notice that you could do a little bit in the third dimension, but you don't. Once you hit the water, if you just stay on the surface, you stay at the 2 dimensional. But once you go under, you can effectively fly. Everything gravity doesn't work. Breathing becomes something that you have to consciously control. And actually, one of my marks is when I've been down long enough that I can't remember how long it's been since I've taken a breath. And of course, the minute that that thought occurs consciously, you're out of that zone. But you get into a zone where you're just um not, we call it in your head. You're not in your head, but you're not obsessed with stuff. You aren't thinking about other things. It's just one of the purest ways to exist
Mhm.
outside of our environment, or outside the environment that we're so used to. It's like if when you went to Japan, it's not learning all the new stuff, it's forgetting all the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
forgetting all the old ways that you greet people, um, the old assumptions. And so any environment you could go into where you have to jettison your assumptions and deal with the world as it is will help you get into that deeper part of your brain. So that's why I consider snorkeling really valuable for that.
Gotcha. Of course, you also mentioned a lot of other things, such as camping without taking along anything electronic or to read, and
Mhm.
people viewing and all that. The book is just chock full of stuff. Um, Before I get too far, what kind of advice would you give someone watching this podcast if they wanted to like take the first step in, getting deeper and being more in touch with that little part of the brain that says danger, danger, Will Robinson?
I first get over the idea that you're trying to look for danger. I think that's why so many people find it so toxic. Is um, if you take a situational awareness class and you come out paranoid, it was a bad situational awareness class. The thing that will burn you out, there's a debate within, especially with the gun self-defense community, and I'm not going to use the words because the words are dumb, but basically, can you stay alert all the time? And the debate, no, you can't. It's too exhausting. And yes, you can. I do it all the time. The thing is that if your alertness, or one of the things, if your alertness is based on looking for danger, of course you're going to burn out. If your alertness is based on paying attention, one, I'll argue the moment you didn't pay attention, you didn't really live. But second, you will notice the guy who's wearing a trench coat when he's not supposed to. You'll notice the bulges under the waist, but you'll also notice when the flowers are coming into bloom, or when there's a feral cat that's moved into the under the house next door and has had kittens, or whatever you think of that makes your life beautiful, you get more of that too. So it makes your life, don't think that upping your situational awareness will make you just more aware of danger. It will make your life better in every way. You'll
So,
notice friends are hurting, you'll so on and so on.
yeah, so by living in the moment rather than like always in our thoughts or worse,
Yeah.
on
On
our
a screen.
tablets, we'll
Yeah.
notice, notice the cherry blossoms, we'll notice the breeze, but we'll also notice things that, kind
Yeah.
of we should take care of. Kind of interesting that, I translated Miyamoto Musashi's book of Five Rings, and I'm struck by one passage where he basically says that your fighting mind should be your everyday mind, and your everyday mind should be your fighting mind, which basically means that you should be like in condition yellow, just awareness of everything, but not freaked out.
Uh,
Even so,
there's more to it than that. You and I have crossed hands, but I don't think we've ever done infighting the way I do it. Um, so you're chest to chest, chest to side, or chest to back. You stay at that range and everything is allowed. Because of the range, it's so fast that if you think consciously, you lose. You're going to get eaten up. So you actually have to abandon yourself in the moment, give up control, quit trying to figure things out, and just move.
mhm.
And it has a bunch of effects, but one of the things is you have to stay in, I call it my happy animal mind, is the place where that comes out. Ideally, I should be able to stay in my happy animal mind all the time because it's just this is what is and this is what I'm doing about it. Instead of trying to label it or second guess it or try to play 4D chess in my head about whether or not to open a door for my wife. Um, it's
Just do
you
it.
just do it.
Okay. Well, thank you for this. We're coming up on our time limit. I want to thank you. Also, if people have I assume that you would not be adverse to coming back sometime, maybe.
I
And I
You're a friend and I like talking to you. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Your friendship means a lot to me. So if anyone wants to, make comments in the comment sections or suggestions for something that will help you that maybe Rory can talk about, go ahead. Possible questions, maybe, a proposal marriage to me. I don't know. Okay.
mhm.
But in any case, thank you very much. And I appreciate you coming on, Rory. Thank you.